They handed me the prenup between courses, right after the duck confit, just before dessert. His mother smiled, her fingers manicured and immovable. "Nothing personal, dear," she said. "We just want to ensure that if things go wrong, you leave with nothing you didn't come with." And him? Caleb. He just sat there. Silent. Stiff. As if my humiliation was a dinner ritual best endured quietly. They thought I was dispensable. An accessory. A charming little footnote in their family legacy. What they didn't know is, I'm Alara Voss. And I'd already inherited something they couldn't control. Not just money. A legacy. One was forged through loyalty, earned respect, and a woman's dying wish that I live on my own terms. So I said nothing. Not then. But I didn't walk out empty-handed. I walked out with power. And 3 weeks later, I walked back in with my own pen. This is what happened. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Heavy, cream-colored, edged in gold leaf. The kind of stationery that didn't just announce, it commanded. The return address read, the Alden Estate. No first names, no warmth, just their surname. Like that alone carried currency. I set it on my counter and stared at it over half-drunk coffee. The room was quiet, save for the low hum of my kettle and the sound of my own thoughts trying not to spiral. I already knew what it was. When I finally opened it, the script felt like something torn from a royal decree. You are cordially invited to a private celebration at the Alden family estate to honor the engagement of Mr. Caleb Alden and Miss Alara Voss. It didn't say our engagement, it said, hiss. That small distinction felt bigger than it should have. Caleb called later that afternoon. His voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. "Did you get the invite, babe?" "Got it," I said, card still in my hand. "Very formal." He chuckled. "Yeah, my mom's a little extra. But it's just a dinner. No speeches or anything. Just one night." One night, I thought, but it'll echo longer than that. The Alden estate sat nestled behind gates taller than any tree on the property. The driveway was long enough to lose signal midway through. As I stepped out of the car, a valet in a navy jacket took my keys without a word. No eye contact, no smile, just procedure. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished marble floors, museum-grade lighting, and portraits too large for comfort. In the center hall, Caleb's mother, Veronica Alden, appeared like a vision out of an architectural digest. Draped in silver silk, lips painted a soft mauve, eyes sharper than they needed to be. "Alara," she said with a graceful nod. "Right on time." She turned before I could answer, already leading the way. Her perfume lingered behind her like an expensive warning. The dining room looked like something reserved for foreign dignitaries. The table, long and flawless, candles lit, place cards printed in gold foil. I searched for Caleb. He was already seated. He didn't rise when I entered, just gestured toward the seat beside him like a hotel concierge offering a late check-in. I sat, smiled. I pretended I didn't notice the way his father, Martin Alden, eyed me like I might chip the china. Conversation started immediately, but not with me. Land deals, art acquisitions, new board appointments, names I didn't recognize, deals I didn't care about. I tried to bring up a literacy grant my nonprofit had just secured. Veronica blinked slowly and murmured, "How thoughtful." The conversation moved on without me. Caleb didn't meet my eyes. Not once. Dinner ended with espresso and Petit's fours. Then Veronica stood, glass in hand. Her tone softened, but only slightly. "We're so thrilled to welcome Alara into the Alden circle," she began. "But before we toast to new beginnings, there's just one small matter we always address with new family." Her voice never wavered. The room didn't blink. From the sideboard, she retrieved a black leather folder and laid it gently in front of me. "I'm sure you understand," she said sweetly. "It's just a precaution." I opened it slowly. 6 pages. Thick, weighted paper. Legal language so clinical it stung. No claim to Alden family holdings. No access to shared estate earnings. No inheritance. No joint intellectual property. No spousal rights to voting shares. Leave with nothing. I looked to Caleb. He didn't speak. Didn't reach for my hand. Just sat there. Eyes lowered. Shoulders stiff. Then, almost as if on cue, he reached into his breast pocket and slid something toward me. A pen, not just any pen, gold-plated, engraved, to Alara. For our forever. He had given it to me a few weeks back. At the time, I'd thought it was romantic. Now it sat next to a contract designed to erase me. Veronica leaned forward, her tone velvet. "It's nothing personal, dear. If anything, it protects you too. This way, everything stays clean should things ever shift." She sipped her wine. The room waited. Someone smiled. Someone else coughed. Even the chandelier felt too bright. I didn't cry. Didn't flinch. I picked up the pen. Twisted it slowly in my fingers. Set it gently back in its box. Closed the folder without signing. Then I stood. "Thank you," I said, my voice calm, "for your hospitality. But I believe I've lost my appetite." As I walked out of the Alden estate that night, I could feel their eyes following me. Not with regret. Not even surprised. Just calculation. The kind that wonders what went wrong. They thought I was leaving empty-handed. But I wasn't leaving. Not really. I was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not for lack of trying. But the kind of silence that follows a betrayal isn't restful. It's raw. It scratches at the walls of your mind, begging to be understood. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the memory of that dining room seared into the backs of my eyes. The polished table. The pen. Callid silence. I kept replaying the same question over and over: why didn't he stop them? By morning, I still had no answer. But I had a voicemail. 4, actually. All from him. I didn't listen. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and stared at my inbox, at all the emails I'd skimmed over these past few months. Meeting invites, guest lists, Alden Foundation press drafts. I'd never paid close attention. Now I couldn't look away. That afternoon, I called Carmen. She answered on the second ring. Talk to me, she said. No preamble. I exhaled. They gave me a prenup last night. She didn't ask what it said. She asked the only question that mattered. Did he say anything? Not a word, I whispered. Just watched. There was a pause, the kind that carries judgment and protection all at once. Lara, she said, carefully, do you want me to look into it? I hesitated. I think this wasn't spontaneous. I think they planned it. I know they did, she said. I've dealt with families like this. And they never make moves without paperwork. That evening, I found myself walking the long route home, avoiding the main streets. Everything felt too loud, too bright, and somehow, too staged. I stopped at a bench near the river and just sat there, letting the wind tangle my hair and thoughts. When did I start mistaking control for love? The Aldens weren't just protective, they were curated. Every event, every interaction, every detail had an agenda. I thought back to the first time I visited their estate. There had been a photographer. He'd said he was there to capture family moments. Now I wondered if I'd ever really been family, or just a photo prop. At home, I went digging. Not through their files, through mine. Old emails, invitations, planning documents. I searched for anything with my name on it, and I mean actually addressed to me, not just copied in. The deeper I looked, the more patterns emerged. I'd never been asked, only included. Everything had been decided for me, and I'd been too polite, or too hopeful, to push back. At 2:17 a.m., I found the one that broke something open, a forwarded document titled, Image Positioning Proposal Q4 Engagement Preview. It was sent by one of the Alden Foundation's PR consultants, 6 months ago. I clicked. My hands trembled. On page 3, a mock-up draft of a press release with my name in bold. Lara Voss represents a compelling new narrative for the Alden family. Her academic background and non-legacy upbringing provide ideal optics for philanthropic expansion. Optics, not qualities, not values. Optics. I blinked. Once, twice. Then I closed the file. I messaged Carmen. You were right. This wasn't just a prenup. It's a campaign. She replied instantly. Let's burn it to the ground. But I didn't feel like burning anything. Not yet. Not until I understood how deep it went. The next morning, I took a walk around the block. The air was sharp but clear. The kind of cold that forces you to be awake. By the time I got back, I knew what I had to do. I sat down at my desk, opened a blank folder, named it Countermeasure. And then I started digging like a woman who finally stopped asking for permission. Somewhere between the 30th email and the second espresso, I stopped seeing Caleb as my fiancé. I started seeing him as a placeholder, a warm smile, a curated future. A man too quiet in rooms that required courage. I hadn't slept again. Instead, I stayed up cataloging every file I'd ever received from anyone within Alden Foundation. Org, email I organized, tagged, and timestamped each document until my desktop looked like a trial board. Carmen called around 7:30 a.m. You look like hell, she said, not unkindly. We were on video chat. I hadn't even noticed. I found something, I told her. Good or bad? Both. At 3:11 a.m., I had opened a file titled Marital Strategy Positioning, Revised. It was buried inside a forwarded ZIP folder from Veronica, sent to Caleb's assistant, and then shared with all parties for visibility. I had never noticed the metadata, until I did. The file had been created on February 5th, 2 years ago. I met Caleb in September of that same year. I didn't even exist in their narrative yet, and they were already preparing legal language to prevent external merger conflicts. I clicked deeper. One clause Reaper. In the event of a merger with a non-legacy partner, all family holdings remain closed unless a legacy tier prenup is signed prior to public announcement. They didn't write that clause for Caleb. They wrote it for whoever he brought home. They wrote it for me. Before they knew me, my stomach twisted. Not from heartbreak. Not even anger. Just clarity. Cold and metallic, like steel falling into place. They didn't see me as a threat. They saw me as a variable. And that, in families like theirs, was worse. I called Carmen back. She was already dressed for court. I need you to pull metadata on anything that came from Veronica's office between January and July of that year, I said. Carmen didn't even blink. Already on it, she said. And Alara. This isn't just manipulation. It's design. They architected your erasure. By mid-afternoon, she had emailed me 3 internal memos. One from the Alden PR director, one from their legal team, and one from Veronica herself. Each one used my name. Each one referenced reputation buffering, controlled narrative management, and a term that made me audibly say, wow. In my apartment, emotional positioning asset. I was an asset, to be positioned, like a vase, or a spin-off. I paced my living room barefoot on hardwood rereading each line. There had been signs, of course. The way they suggested, vendors, the pre-approved wedding color palette, the script Caleb used to announce our engagement online. His mother had written it. I'd laughed at that once, called it quaint. Now it felt like I'd been tricked into starring in someone else's campaign. That evening, as the sun dipped below San Antonio's skyline, I opened the package I'd been avoiding. It had arrived the week before. No return label. Just a wax seal I knew instantly. Evelyn Leclerc. My godmother. My mentor. The woman who once told me, never sit at a table that only wants your silence. She'd passed away 5 months earlier. Inside the envelope were 2 things: a handwritten note that read, "If you're reading this, someone tried to silence you. I built something for women like us. You're not meant to fit in. You're meant to outgrow." A stack of notarized legal documents confirming that I, Alara Voss, was now the sole heir to Leclerc Bioanalytics, a quiet but powerful think tank she'd co-founded years ago. Estimated value after pending grants and investments, $30 million. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there. The prenup they handed me said I would leave with nothing. And now, I held proof that I'd entered this relationship with more than they ever gave me credit for. Not just wealth. Worth. The kind that couldn't be signed away. I texted Carmen. She left it all to me. Carmen replied with one word. Good. Followed by another. Now let's make them regret underestimating you. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of anxiety. Out of focus. I gathered everything: files, statements, emails, and timestamps. I drafted my own prenup. Not out of spite. Out of symmetry. If they wanted a contract, they were about to get one. 3 weeks later, I walked back into the Alden estate. Not as a guest. Not as a bride-to-be. But as a woman with leverage. I wore the same black coat I'd worn the night they tried to hand me silence, only this time the lining carried documents. The pen in my pocket wasn't a gift. It was a statement. Carmen had reviewed everything. Twice. The terms. The language. The backup clauses. She called it elegant warfare. When the butler opened the grand front doors, his posture shifted. He remembered me. Miss Voss, he said. No hesitation. No, man, nodded. I believe they're expecting me. They were. Sort of. Caleb greeted me in the foyer, stiff in a tailored blazer. He looked smaller, not in size, but in certainty. Like the house no longer backed him the way it used to. You look nice, he said. Thanks, I replied, not removing my coat. Behind him, Veronica appeared, perfect as always. Hair set, earrings gleaming, smile thinly. We're glad you came, she said. Let's not dwell on the past. Today's about clarity. She had no idea how right she was. We moved to the formal parlor. Same room, same table. But I chose my seat this time. Martin Alden, Caleb's father, joined us with a polite nod. A lawyer I didn't recognize stood by the sideboard. Probably on retainer. Small talk fluttered, about weather, travel, and stocks. I let them fill the silence. Then, as the butler began pouring champagne, I raised my hand. Before we toast, I said, pulling a navy folder from my bag, I'd like to introduce a small tradition of my own. All movement stopped. Caleb blinked. Veronica's eyes narrowed, but her mouth stayed smiling. I set the folder on the table, tutty, centered, deliberate. It's a prenup, I said calmly. The silence that followed was perfect. Veronica finally spoke. Excuse me. Joint access to all future income, I said, tapping the folder. Equal stake in any ventures, shared control of assets acquired during the marriage, and, I paused for effect. Full transparency on all holdings both parties bring into the union. Martin shifted uncomfortably. That's rather one-sided. Not if you believe in equality, I replied. Caleb reached for the folder. His hands were shaking. You're serious? I met his eyes. Do I look like someone bluffing? Veronica's voice turned sharp. This is absurd. You don't just rewrite the rules because your ego's bruised. I'm not rewriting, I said. I'm simply responding in kind. I reached into my coat and pulled out a second envelope, cream-colored, wax-sealed, with Evelyn's initials on the front. This, I said, sliding it across the table to their lawyer, confirms my sole ownership of Leclerc Bioanalytics. Estimated value $30 million, along with the intellectual property protections that come with it. Veronica's jaw tightened. I don't see how that concerns us. It does, I said, leaning forward, because Clause 9 of the trust explicitly prohibits merger with any family that leverages prenup coercion. If this contract isn't signed today, The partnership dissolves. Permanently. Martin paled. The lawyer unfolded the documents. Read in silence. Caleb looked between me and the paper. Why now? Because for once, I said, my voice low and steady. You're gonna sign something you didn't plan. No one spoke. Even the chandelier above us felt like it was listening. I pulled out Evelyn's gold pen, placed it beside the folder. The same pen she'd used for every final deal of her life. I'm not asking, I said. I'm offering. Sign it, and we continue. Decline, I walk. No leaks. But no second chances either. Veronica looked to Martin. Martin looked to the lawyer. Then, to my quiet satisfaction, they looked to Caleb, because this time, they didn't get to decide. He picked up the pen. He held it in his fingers like it might burn him. And then, he signed. Not out of love. Out of understanding. Understanding that I wasn't disposable. That I never was. I took the folder, closed it, and stood. Thank you for your time, I said, slipping the file into my bag. Veronica tried to smile. Martin tried to salvage the moment. But none of it mattered. Because for once I was the only one holding the pen. I didn't go home that night. I went to Carmen's office, and we worked until dawn. Not out of revenge. Out of precision. We compiled everything. The dated documents, the strategy decks, the emails that called me an emotional optics asset. The engagement marketing timeline was drafted months before I'd even met Caleb. By sunrise, we had a package 27 pages. Labeled, Asset Repositioning Strategy, the Alara Voss play. It read like satire, only it wasn't. At 8:12 a.m., we sent the entire file to 3 journalists, one from The Atlantic, one from the Washington Ledger, and one who had once been my ethics professor at university, now a well-known columnist on corporate manipulation. No commentary, no embellishment, just the truth. Then I posted one sentence publicly. When families use love as a cover for control, it's no longer tradition, it's strategy. Here's what that looks like. Attached was a ZIP file. That was all it took. The internet did the rest. By lunchtime, my inbox had collapsed under thousands of emails. Former interns, other women, employees from other legacy families. Some wrote, I'm sorry, I saw this happen to someone else. Others, I thought you were overreacting. I was wrong. One message hit different. I was once the Alara, in a boardroom proposal. But I didn't fight. Thank you for showing us what fighting looks like. Within hours, it went viral. TikTok creators broke down the deck slide by slide. One girl drew diagrams on a whiteboard labeled, The Marital Merger Playbook, with a red circle around the phrase, underdog narrative with long-term media yield. They'd turned me into a formula. Now the formula was on fire. That night, Caleb released a video statement. He stood in front of a fireplace. Navy blazer. No tie. A practiced sadness in his eyes. I never meant to hurt anyone, he said. I believed in love. I still do. This situation is complicated. He didn't say my name. Not once. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the next morning, everything broke loose. First, a children's cancer nonprofit pulled out of a joint campaign with the Alden Foundation. Then, a luxury fashion house canceled a multi-million-dollar deal with Veronica. By noon, Martin Alden had stepped down from 2 board seats. By evening, a state senator opened an investigation into undisclosed lobbying activity tied to Alden family charity funds. At Carmen's office, we watched the statements come in. She poured tea. I didn't touch mine. She lit 2 candles by the window. Soft, steady light. I finally looked up. I don't feel triumphant, I said. You're not supposed to, she replied. Truth isn't meant to feel like victory, just relief. I nodded. It's not revenge. It's exposure. Exactly, she whispered. It's overdue. That night, I logged into our old wedding planning portal. At the top of the page, event canceled due to privacy concerns and third-party interference. The Alden family, I smiled. Sanitized, predictable. But below it, I saw a reply button. So I used it. I uploaded every internal email, every asset deck, every strategy document, including the one where they mocked my PhD thesis for being media, soft but ivy-coated. No comment, no caption. Just the truth. By morning, the Alara file had its own hashtag, Fate Know Your Worth trended. So did Faye Legacy's Fime Am Not Your Asset and the one I never expected. Per Alara clause, then came the final blow. A junior PR assistant from inside the Alden Foundation leaked an unreleased campaign draft titled, Modern Love Meets Legacy Wealth, the Alara Effect. They had planned to pitch it to Vogue. In it, my image was pasted across 6 different mock covers. Captions like, From Modest Beginnings to Mansion Vows. A love story with PR payoff. I wasn't just engaged. I was leveraged. Carmen called at 7:46 a.m. Her voice was calm. Alara, do you want to go silent now? Or go louder? I looked around my apartment. My plants, my books, my quiet. Then I said louder. But this time, not just for me. At 8:10 a.m., we filed the legal paperwork to launch the Evelyn Initiative, a foundation designed to support women escaping financial coercion, family control, or contract-based abuse. Our first campaign. The cost of a signature, A documentary series, starting with my story. Later that day, I received a short email, no subject line. Just 5 words. Did you ever love me? I didn't answer. Because the truth. He still thought this was about him. I didn't need to watch the Aldens fall. I only needed to watch myself walk away, intact. After the last leak, the last apology statement, and the final board resignation, I logged into my wedding folder. Everything was still there. Mood boards, vendor contracts, dress sketches. A half-written vow I no longer recognized as my own. I didn't scroll. I click delete. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" Yes. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Caleb. 5 words. Did you ever love me? I stared at them, not because I didn't know the answer, but because he still thought this was about him. I hit block, and the connection ended not with a bang, with a click. That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was the original prenup they'd handed me weeks ago. Clause after clause reducing my presence to an exit plan. I placed it in a leather folder labeled, "Closed Lessons." Then I locked the drawer. Not out of bitterness, out of clarity. My apartment was still sparse, new furniture, no memories yet, but it smelled like me. Cedar, lavender paper. Not marble floors or white orchids arranged by someone paid to keep up appearances. I curled up on the couch, tea in hand, and stared out at the city blinking gently in the distance. No cameras, no headlines, no scripts, just peace. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of the new office. Brick facade, frosted windows. A plaque near the door, the Evelyn Initiative built on truth. Funded by women. For women who refused to be reduced. The reception desk was small but welcoming. The conference room had no long table. Just round ones. Because here, we don't sit across from each other. We sit with. They asked me if I wanted to be the face of the campaign. I said no. I wanted to be the voice behind it. Because pain doesn't always need a spotlight. Sometimes it just needs funding. The first campaign launched quietly. The cost of a signature. A digital series documenting stories like mine. Women who were groomed by wealth. Buried under non-disclosure clauses. Rewritten in someone else's version of love. The response was immediate. Not explosive, deep. Emails came in from women in Italy, Nigeria, and Peru. I thought I was crazy. I thought it was love. I signed. I wish I hadn't. We funded legal support. Translation services, emergency housing, and above all, narrative reclamation. Veronica Alden eventually issued a formal apology, crafted sterile. We regret the unintended consequences. Martin gave a radio interview. Caleb disappeared. No more press. No more outreach. Just silence. The same kind he once used like a scalpel. I didn't chase any of it, because the truth had legs now. It didn't need mine. One evening, long after everyone had left the office, I opened my journal and wrote a letter, not to him, to her. The girl I used to be. You weren't difficult. You were deliberate. You weren't too much. You were ahead. They tried to cage your power, because they saw it before you did. But you found it anyway. Later that night, I kicked off my shoes at the doorway. The apartment was dark and still. No noise. No expectations. I poured one last glass of wine and stood by the window. I didn't toast. Didn't raise it like a victory. I just sipped, slow, steady. Some people hand you contracts to define your worth. Others ask you to sign away pieces of yourself for a seat at their table. But real value, it doesn't come with clauses or conditions. It comes the moment you stop asking to be invited and start building your own damn house.